The Crumbley case, parental responsibility, gun control, and school safety. On March 14th, James Crumbley, father of Ethan Crumbley, who killed 4 students at a Michigan high school, was found guilty of 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, a month after the shooter's mother, Jennifer Crumbley, was convicted of the same charges. The Crumbleys face a maximum punishment of up to 15 years in prison. James is set to be sentenced on April 9th. His wife, Jennifer Crumbley, will be sentenced on the same date and time. The cases against the Crumbleys represent a test of the limits of who is responsible for a mass shooting. Prosecutors aiming to expand the scope of blame in mass shootings use a novel legal strategy by arguing the parents are personally responsible for the deaths because they bought their son a gun and ignored the signs of his declining mental health. Parents have previously faced liability for their child's actions, such as with neglect or firearm charges, but the Crumbley's guilty verdicts were the first time a school shooter's parents were held directly responsible for their killings. Prosecutors proved that Jennifer and James Crumbley had grossly neglected their parental duty by not preventing the obvious danger their son presented. Let's look at a timeline of the events leading up to this tragedy. On March 9th, 2021, Ethan started to send his mother a series of texts saying that he was hearing voices. He asked her to come home because he thought there was someone in the house using the toilet and slamming the door. About a week later, Ethan texted that there was a demon in the house throwing bowls in the kitchen. He texted his mother, "Can you at least text back?" Jennifer Crumbley did not respond until 2 days later. In August, Ethan made a video of himself handling his father's 2022 caliber Caltech pistol and sent it to his friend with an invitation to go to the shooting range the following Sunday. The friend declined. At 12:30 a.m., Ethan sent another video, this time of him loading the gun and pulling back the safety. "My dad left it out, so I thought, why not?" Ethan texted. "Now it's time to shoot up the school." Around Halloween, Ethan began spending hours on a website devoted to killings and school shootings. During November, he visited the website 421 times. He also kept a journal, 21 pages of writing and drawing in a black notebook. "I have fully mentally lost it after years of fighting with my dark side," Ethan wrote. "My parents won't listen to me about help or a therapist." His father knew about the journal and encouraged him to express his feelings in it. But according to the Crumbleys' lawyers, neither parent ever looked at it, nor did they check the phone for videos, photos, or text messages, or look at his browser history. The Friday after Thanksgiving, James went to the Acme shooting goods store and purchased a 9mm using his credit card. Ethan came along and waited while his father ticked a box attesting that he understood it was illegal to buy a gun for someone else. On November 27th, Jennifer Crumbley was captured on a security camera, leaving a shooting range with the handgun in tow. She had just taken Ethan out to target practice in what she described on social media as a mom and son day testing out his new Christmas present, the 9mm pistol, which Ethan referred to as his new beauty. On Tuesday, November 30th, at 9:33 a.m., Jennifer texted James, "Call now, emergency." At 9:38, she texted 2 photos of a math sheet Ethan had been working on that morning. During second period, the geometry teacher walked past Ethan's desk, and what she saw caused her such alarm that she took a photo with her phone and brought it to the dean of students. Ethan had drawn a pistol almost exactly like the one his father had just bought. He had drawn a human figure filled with holes and a laughing, crying face. He had written, "The thoughts won't stop," "Help me," and "Blood everywhere," and "The world is dead." Administrators at Oxford High School promptly took Ethan out of class, called his parents, and summoned them to the school. When the Crumleys arrived, school officials strongly encouraged them to take Ethan out of school and get him into emergency medical treatment. The Crumleys declined, stating that they had to go back to work. At 12:20 p.m., Jennifer texted Ethan, "You okay?" Ethan texted back, "Yeah, I just got back from lunch." Jennifer texted, "You know you can talk to us and we won't judge." Ethan texted, "I know, thank you. I'm sorry for that. I love you." Between 1:17 and 1:18, James called Ethan 3 more times. At the same time, Jennifer was texting their son, "I love you too." Then, "You okay?" At 1:22, she sent him another text. "Ethan, don't do it." 2 hours after his parents left the school, Ethan went to the boys' bathroom between classes. He took the new gun out of his backpack and walked down the hallway, shooting at his classmates. Madison Baldwin, Hannah St. Juliana, Tate Meyer, and Justin Schilling were killed that day. 6 other students and 1 teacher were injured. After the shooting, James and Jennifer went to the local police station where they were interviewed. They then fled their home, now a crime scene, for a hotel. The Crumleys did not feel safe with the press camped out and death threats swamping their phones. Upon learning that they also might be charged, they fled to an artist studio in a Detroit warehouse and stopped responding to phone calls. On Saturday, police found them with 4 burner phones, 4 gift cards, 10 credit cards, and $6,600 in cash. The Crumleys had cleaned out Ethan's bank account. The convictions of James and Jennifer Crumbley sent a strong message to parents nationwide about parental responsibility and accountability. Parental responsibility laws impose civil or criminal liability on adults under the premise that their failures to take control as parents led to their kids' bad behavior. Efforts to hold parents accountable for their children's behaviors are rooted in the origins of the nation's juvenile justice system since the early 1900s, which authorized the state to intervene when parents failed in their duties. By the 1970s, lawmakers began to place a greater emphasis on parents as a factor in juvenile crime and turned to vicarious blaming, also known as punish the parent laws. Little is known about whether such efforts have been effective in reducing juvenile crime. Eve Brank, a professor of law and psychology at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, stated that after decades of researching the emergence of parental responsibility laws, she was unaware of any empirical research that shows that imposing punishments on parents because of the actions of their children will decrease juvenile crime. Many of those statutes came under a lot of strain in the last 15 years as people were skeptical about whether they addressed the root causes underlying the social problems they sought to address. Although punish the parent laws have been on the books for more than a century, essential questions remain unresolved. When children who become criminals grow up in violent communities, who is really to blame for their actions? At what age are people ultimately responsible for their own behavior? How much control can a parent reasonably exercise over a teenager, especially an older one? While prosecutors, gun safety advocates, and the public have celebrated the convictions of Jennifer and James Crumbley, others worry that the case establishes a dangerous new precedent, one with legal ramifications that will likely be felt by parents whose children are black or brown, poor, and living in neighborhoods plagued by gun violence. Prosecuting extreme cases like the Crumbley can also repave the road to mass incarceration, which history has shown us does not make us safer or end cycles of violence. Lastly, many lawyers contend that parental responsibility laws violate a fundamental principle of common law, that one person cannot be punished for the acts of others. Gun control. The Crumbley case largely focused on how the parents failed to respond to repeated warning signs that their son was dangerous. But another component of the case is that the semi-automatic handgun used in the shooting was purchased for the shooter by his parents and then left unsecured in the home. The cable lock it came with was never used. The code for the gun safe the family purchased never changed from its factory settings. After the Oxford High School shooting in November 2021, gun control groups and student advocates hoped that the Republican-led legislature would act and implement gun safety laws, but bills were never passed. Starting in January 2023, Democrats took over the majority in both chambers of the legislature and passed a series of gun reform policies. Safe storage law regulations create mandates for gun owners on how they store their weapons to prevent children and other unauthorized users from accessing them. At the time of the Oxford shooting, Michigan had no safe storage law. Governor Whitmer signed a safe storage measure into law in April 2023. The new law went into effect on February 13th. It requires all gun owners in the state who have children in their homes to store their firearm weapons with either a cable lock or in a gun safe. School safety. Independent investigators commissioned by the district found that the Oxford school officials failed to keep students safe from the school shooter. If proper threat assessment guidelines had been in place and district threat assessment policy followed, this tragedy could have been avoided. Ethan Crumbley was not identified as a threat, even though his conduct, statements, and drawings suggested that he might cause physical harm at school. That was because Oxford High School administrators and staff failed to recognize his behavior as a threat in accordance with guidelines adopted by the district. Staff was not aware of the low threshold for identifying potential threats, had not been trained in threat assessment, and were unaware of the form used to characterize and address threats. Had the threat assessment procedures been deployed, the shooter's behavior would have been elevated to the principal or school resource officer, who could have initiated a search of his belongings that would have prevented the attack. Questions. First question. Should the Crumbleys be held responsible for their son's 4 murders? Second question. Do you think that the Crumbley case will set a new precedence for minors who commit murder? Third question. Do punish the parent laws decrease juvenile violence? What other unintended consequences might it produce?